It was a quiet October afternoon, the kind where the sun doesn't shine so much as it lingers, and everything feels like it's holding its breath, the kind of afternoon that feels like nothing could go wrong. I was sitting on my back porch with a cup of lukewarm tea, watching the leaves fall into Meridian Lake like forgotten thoughts. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just the way the wind shifted through the trees, the faint sound of a neighbor's lawnmower 3 houses down, the weight of silence in a house meant for more than one person. And then I saw her, my daughter-in-law, Julie. She came tearing down that dirt road like a bat out of hell, tires kicking up dust, engine growling like it was about to come apart. That road wasn't made for speed. It curved and dipped and knew how to punish careless drivers. My late husband used to curse it every winter, but Julie didn't slow down. She didn't hesitate, and she didn't look around. She stopped right at the lake's edge, maybe 10 feet from the water, and jumped out of the car. My heart jolted. I stood up so fast my teacup tipped, spilling onto the porch wood. She popped the trunk with one violent motion, and that's when I saw it. A brown leather suitcase. Big, old, familiar. She struggled with it, grunting, dragging. I knew that suitcase. I gave it to her and my son, Mark, the Christmas before he disappeared. 3 years ago. A practical gift. Durable. Italian leather. I'd found it at that little shop off Route 17, the one with the cracked bell above the door. "You'll use it on your honeymoon," I'd said. I remember that now, like a slap. Julie yanked the suitcase to the shoreline. She didn't notice me. Too focused, too frantic. She looked around once, not up toward the porch, just around the trees. Then, with a heave that made her whole body shudder, she threw it into the lake. The sound it made when it hit the water, like something final, like a door slamming shut on something that was alive. The suitcase bobbed once, then started to sink. Julie ran back to her car. I couldn't move, not for a full 10 seconds. I just watched as she peeled out and disappeared down the same road she came in on, leaving a trail of dust and confusion behind her. Then finally my body started to react. First my breath, then my legs. I ran. God help me, I ran. My feet thudded across the lawn, down the path Mark used to bike on, across the gravel that stabbed into my soles. I was wheezing by the time I got to the water. The suitcase already half submerged, its handle just visible. I waded in. The water was freezing. October, cold. It gripped my legs like a warning. But I didn't stop. I reached for the handle and pulled. The weight of it was all wrong, too heavy, too dense, something alive or something dead, but definitely not clothes. And then, just as I got it onto the shore, I heard it. A sound, muffled, gurgled. A voice? My hands shook as I clawed at the zipper, wet leather resisting me. The suitcase groaned open. I peeled back the flap, expecting, I don't know what. But not this. Never this. And now, sitting here in this cold police interview room 3 hours later, I can still feel the weight of that moment in my chest. The image burned into the backs of my eyelids. But if you want to understand how we got here, how a woman like Julie, with her clipped voice and expensive boots and all those secrets, ended up doing what she did, you need to know about what came before, about Mark, about the slow unraveling of trust, about silence. Because sometimes a story doesn't start with a suitcase. It starts with the person who's missing. And if you've made it this far, if something in you wants to know the rest, subscribe to Elderly Stories. Leave a comment, because I'm going to tell you everything, and I don't intend to hold anything back. Just don't look away when the truth starts to sting. I still remember the first time I met Julie. It was a sticky Sunday in late July, and Mark had brought her to church. St. Thomas on Juniper Street, the little brick building with the crooked steeple and the old red doors. He walked in a few steps behind her, like he always did with people he thought were too good for him. That's how I knew he loved her. Not because of what he said, but because of the way he dimmed his own light for hers. She wore a pale yellow sundress, too thin for modesty, and had this air about her. Cool, reserved, like someone always 3 thoughts ahead. She shook hands with Father Rowan like she was doing him a favor. When Mark introduced us, she smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Julie," she said, like the name should mean something to me. That night over dinner, I asked him what she did. He told me she worked in marketing, branding, image, PR. "She's brilliant," he said, "can sell water to a drowning man." And when I raised an eyebrow, he laughed and added, "But don't worry, Ma, she's the real deal. She's just different." Different was one word for it. She never called me Betty, always Mrs. Callahan, even after they moved in together, even after they got engaged. I offered to help with the wedding, and she said, "No offense, but I'd prefer to keep things simple and modern." Translation: I don't want your church, your food, or your taste. But Mark, he was smitten. I've seen that look on him only twice. Once when he found our old dog, Penny, as a boy, and once when he showed me Julie's engagement ring. "I'm gonna marry her, Ma," he said, grinning, holding up the tiny velvet box. "She makes me better." And maybe she did at first. He started dressing sharper. He stopped biting his nails. He cut back on his drinking, started running in the mornings. He even stopped leaving his dirty socks on the living room floor, which, believe me, was a miracle on par with Moses parting the sea. They married in a courthouse ceremony with no flowers and no family. I got an email invite to the after-dinner drinks. She said she preferred things intimate. Mark looked happy in the pictures he sent, but something about his eyes. I don't know, there was a tightness there, like he was smiling with someone else's mouth. They moved into a condo downtown on Ellison and 8th. Brand new development. Modern, gray, soulless. Not a single picture on the walls the first time I visited. Just a big flat screen, a chrome kitchen, and a white couch that looked like no one had ever sat on it. Julie offered me mineral water and didn't ask about my drive. She gave me a tour like a real estate agent. Guest room, his and hers sinks, blackout blinds, heated bathroom floor. When I asked if she liked living there, she just said, "It suits our needs." For now. I saw Mark less after that. At first, I assumed it was just life. Busy jobs, grown-up routines, new wife. But he used to call me every Sunday morning without fail. Then it was every other Sunday. Then once a month. Then not at all unless I called first. I left voicemails. "Just checking in," I'd say. "No pressure. Call me when you can." I didn't want to be the overbearing mother-in-law. But the truth is, my chest got tight every time a holiday passed without a word. And then he vanished, 3 years ago in April. Julie called me from the condo. "He didn't come home last night," she said, her voice cool but clipped. "It's not like him. He hasn't answered his phone." At first, I thought, maybe he's blowing off steam. Maybe they fought. I asked if they had. She hesitated. We argued, but not serious. But it was serious. Because Mark never came home again. The police found his car at a rest stop 2 hours away, locked, keys still in the ignition, no sign of struggle, no note. His phone was off, his wallet inside the glove box, vanished. The investigation went nowhere. No leads, no sightings, no charges. After 3 weeks, they called it a presumed voluntary disappearance. But I never believed that. Not for a second. Mark wouldn't run. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a coward. And Julie? She didn't shed a tear in front of me. Not once. When I came over to ask her questions, to plead, really, she offered me tea and said, "I'm sure he'll turn up. Sometimes people just leave." Like he'd gone out for milk and forgotten to come back. I asked if she wanted to search together, post flyers, talk to his friends. She declined. "I think it's best we let the police handle it," she said. And then, 3 months later, she sold the condo, moved across town, changed her phone number. Just like that. I told the detectives something wasn't right, that she wasn't grieving, that she wasn't even pretending. They said there was no evidence of foul play, but my gut knew better. Now, 3 years later, I find her throwing that same suitcase into the lake. The suitcase Mark had taken on their honeymoon, the one I gave them. And now, that sound I heard, that muffled cry from inside. My God, I keep thinking, if I had stepped onto that porch 30 seconds later, If I had looked the other way instead of toward the lake, that child, whoever they are, would have been gone. But they weren't. They're alive. And Julie, wherever she is now, she knows I saw her. I just don't think she knows yet what I'm going to do with that. The police were polite. At first, they took my statement at the house. 2 officers, one older with a crooked nose and the kind of weary eyes that said he'd seen worse than whatever I was about to tell him. The other one, younger, eager, probably still getting used to the smell of wet carpet and old coffee in the cruiser. They asked the same questions 3 different ways, like they were fishing for cracks. You're sure it was your daughter-in-law? Yes. You're sure it was the same suitcase? Yes. You're sure you didn't imagine the crying? That one made me pause. Because how do you explain that sound? That faint, helpless cry muffled through soaked leather and terror? It was the kind of sound that once you hear it, it roots itself inside you. I still hear it when the house goes quiet. I still feel the weight of that suitcase, the way it pulled at my arms like guilt. I said yes again, firmer this time. The baby, they took him to county medical. The paramedics said he was stable, but just barely. Severe hypothermia, mild bruising on the arms and chest, cord still attached with a bit of twine. No ID, no note, no explanation, just a newborn stuffed into a suitcase and sunk like a secret. They let me ride with him in the ambulance. I sat in the back, holding a blanket around myself, drenched to the bone, shaking not from the cold but from the weight of it all. He was so small, wrapped in tubes and wires and machines. A tiny chest rising and falling like a whisper. I didn't know his name, so I gave him one in my head, just to say something to him, just to keep him here. I called him Charlie. I don't know why. Maybe it was the name Mark almost had. Maybe it just felt right. When we got to the hospital, they wheeled him in first. I followed close behind, barefoot, hair soaked, smelling like lake water in panic. I must have looked unhinged because the nurses kept giving me sidelong glances like they weren't sure if I was the savior or the cause. A social worker showed up. Her name was Karen, of all things. She had that overly calm voice people use when they think you might break. Soft and flat like she was trying to pet a wild animal. She led me to a small waiting room with green walls and plastic chairs that stuck to the back of your thighs. "We just need a bit more information," she said, flipping open a thin manila file. I told her everything. How I saw Julie's silver Prius tear down the lake road. How I watched her throw the suitcase. How I ran, pulled it out of the water, opened it, and found the baby inside. She kept scribbling notes as I spoke, nodding, not interrupting, her eyes scanning every word like they were looking for traps. "And you're sure it was your daughter-in-law?" "Yes." "Can you describe her clothing?" "A gray hoodie, dark jeans, hair pulled back. She was moving fast, looked like she hadn't slept." "License plate?" I hesitated. I didn't remember. God help me. I didn't look. I didn't see. Her pen paused. I saw it happen. I know I did. But in that moment, I realized something chilling. I hadn't seen Julie's face. Not clearly. The figure was her height, her build. Same car, same posture. But I hadn't looked into her eyes. What if it wasn't her? The thought crawled into me like rot. Karen didn't say much after that, just nodded, handed me a packet of forms, and told me someone would be in touch. By that point, they'd already run the baby's blood type. AB negative. A rare one. They took my DNA too. A cheek swab, painless, simple, invasive in a way nothing physical should be. The nurse asked if I had children. I said yes. 1. Mark. She didn't ask anything else. Later that evening, as I sat in the waiting room, shivering in borrowed scrubs, Detective Gina Laramie walked in. 40-something. Professional, clean navy blazer. The kind of woman who didn't waste time. She introduced herself, sat across from me, and said, "We need to talk about Julie." She had a folder in her hands. "We pulled Julie's financials," she began. "There was a large withdrawal 2 days ago, $10,000 in cash." Unusual for her. "Did she leave town?" "We don't know yet. Her apartment's locked. No signs of struggle, no signs of packing either. But her phone's been off since yesterday. That's not normal for her, according to her coworkers. She has coworkers? That surprised me. Last I heard, she'd been doing freelance consulting from home. But apparently, she'd taken a job at a boutique marketing firm 6 months earlier. Gina handed me a photo. A still from a gas station camera. It was Julie's car, no doubt about that. Timestamp 6:12 p.m., same day. Problem was that gas station was 40 miles from the lake, and I had seen the suitcase hit the water at exactly 5:47 p.m. I know because the kitchen clock was broken again, stuck at 5:15, and I'd checked my wristwatch before running out. I remembered the time. I always remember when things go wrong. She couldn't have made it to that gas station in that amount of time, I said. Exactly, Laramie nodded. Which raises a question. Was it even Julie you saw? My throat went dry. What are you suggesting? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she opened the folder and pulled out another photo. This one from a hospital surveillance camera 2 years ago. Julie pushing Mark in a wheelchair after his appendectomy. She looked the same as the woman by the lake, down to the same gait, same posture, same damn jacket. I stared at the photo for a long time. Laramie's voice was softer when she spoke again. Mrs. Callahan, do you have any reason to believe your daughter-in-law would want to harm a child? I looked down at my hands, wet, wrinkled, dirt still under the nails from pulling that suitcase out. The same hands that held Mark when he was born, the same hands that packed his lunch for school, that cupped his face when he cried, that signed the papers when the search was called off. No, I said, but I didn't think she'd walk away from Mark either. Laramie nodded. That's fair. And then she said something that turned the air in my lungs to stone. There's something else. The baby. She paused as if deciding whether I could take what came next. The baby is biologically related to your son. Everything in me stopped. My voice was barely a whisper. You're saying he's my grandson? Laramie didn't answer with words. She just slid a document across the table, black and white, printed from the hospital lab, one name highlighted, paternal match, 99.98% certainty, Mark Callahan. For a long moment, I just stared at the document in Detective Laramie's hand, the words swimming in and out of focus as if my brain refused to anchor them. Paternal match, 99.98% certainty. It looked like nothing. A line of sterile ink, a statistic. But I felt it detonate somewhere deep in my chest. My grandson, I repeated, the word tasting strange in my mouth. Yes, Laramie said softly, he's Mark's child. She said it like an anchor, firm and final, but I couldn't seem to grab onto it. My Mark, gone for 3 years, had a child I never knew about. A baby small enough to fit in my arms, found half dead in a suitcase at the bottom of a lake. A baby Julie had tried to drown. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Mrs. Callahan, are you all right? No, I whispered. But go on. Laramie nodded to the nurse who lingered by the door. Bring her some water, please. Then, turning back to me, she slid another file from the folder. We ran Julie's hospital records. She gave birth 3 days ago. No hospital listed. Home delivery, probably. We found blood traces in her car consistent with postpartum levels. I took a shaky breath. So she gave birth, drove to the lake, and tried to get rid of the evidence. Laramie finished it for me, blunt as a hammer. We believe she thought the baby was stillborn or she wanted him to be. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to picture it, but I saw it anyway. The gray water, the trembling hands, the suitcase sinking inch by inch until the last air bubble burst. Why would she do that? My voice cracked. Why would she kill her own child? Laramie sighed. We don't know yet, but we're reopening your son's missing person case. There are irregularities. That word, irregularities, sat on the table like a live thing. What kind of irregularities? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the folder again and placed a small evidence bag in front of me. Inside was a gold wedding band, dull and scratched, engraved on the inside. To mark, "Forever, Jay." My breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "It was found yesterday morning," she said quietly, "inside the lining of the suitcase." My stomach turned. "You're saying We're saying it's suspicious," she interrupted gently. "But I need to be clear, Mrs. Callahan. Right now, Julie is missing. She's not in custody. We've issued a BOLO across 3 counties, but there's no sign of her. No bank activity, no phone signal, no credit card use. It's like she vanished." I looked down at the ring again. The metal seemed smaller than I remembered, like it had shrunk under the weight of everything it carried. Mark's ring. My son's ring. Hidden in a suitcase with his newborn son. I couldn't breathe. "Can I see the baby?" I asked finally. My voice came out hollow. Laramie hesitated, then nodded. "He's in the NICU, stable but still critical. The doctors want to keep him under observation for a few more days." She led me down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. My wet sandals slapped softly against the linoleum. Through a glass window, I saw him, small as a loaf of bread, swaddled in white, tiny wires running across his chest. His skin had color again, his lips pink now instead of blue. A nurse adjusted a monitor beside him, humming something quiet and tender. "That's him," Laramie said. I moved closer, one hand pressed against the glass. "He looks like Mark," I whispered before I even realized I'd said it. The same nose, the same long fingers. I felt my throat tighten until I could barely speak. "He's beautiful." "He's lucky you were there," the detective said. Lucky. The word felt wrong. There was nothing lucky about any of this. "How long can they keep him?" I asked. "As long as they need to. He's technically in state custody until we locate the mother or a guardian can be approved." I turned to face her. "I'm his family. He's my grandson. I'll take him." She exhaled slowly, a sound halfway between sympathy and caution. "I figured you'd say that, but you'll have to go through child services. It's a process. Background checks, home visits, the whole 9 yards." "I don't care," I said. "I'll do whatever it takes." She gave a small nod. "Then start tomorrow. For tonight, get some rest. Go home, dry off, eat something. We'll call if there's news." But I didn't go home. I stayed in that waiting room all night, sitting on the hard chair under the humming fluorescent lights, staring through the glass at that tiny chest rising and falling, over and over. Proof that something in this world still worked the way it should. By morning, the police had combed the lake. They found tire tracks, the same model as Julie's Prius, and 2 distinct footprints. One matched her shoe size. The other was smaller, men's, worn soles, maybe a size 10. "Mark's size," I said before I could stop myself. Laramie looked at me carefully. "You're sure?" "I used to buy his shoes," I said. "You don't forget those details." She jotted it down. Could be someone helping her, or someone she's hiding from. The thought chilled me. That afternoon, I finally went home. The house felt emptier than usual, still smelled faintly of the lake, of wet wood and guilt. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone, half hoping it would ring with good news, half dreading it would ring at all. At 5 hours sharp, it did. "Unknown number," I answered. No one spoke at first, just breathing, soft, shallow, like someone testing the line. Then a woman's voice, calm but trembling at the edges. "Betty," she said, "Julie." My blood ran cold. "Where are you?" I managed. A long silence. Then, almost in a whisper, "You shouldn't have opened it." The line went dead. I sat there in the quiet, the dial tone humming in my ear, realizing that the story wasn't finished. It was just beginning. And Julie wasn't running. She was watching. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen with the cordless phone in front of me like it might ring again. I watched the shadows move across the floor. I listened for sounds that didn't belong. A door creaking, tires crunching on gravel, the quiet threat of a window screen shifting. I couldn't shake the sound of Julie's voice from my head, not the words she'd said, "You shouldn't have opened it," but the way she'd said them, not angry, not afraid, more like disappointed, like I'd spoiled something. By morning, I was a mess. I hadn't showered, hadn't eaten, but I pulled on jeans and an old sweater anyway and drove to county services. The building was an ugly concrete thing tucked behind the post office on Maple Avenue. I parked in the side lot next to a half-dead oak tree and sat there for a full minute before forcing myself out of the car. Inside, it smelled like coffee filters and low expectations. I told the receptionist I was there about the baby, the one from the lake. I said the word grandson once, quietly, just to see how it felt. She made a call, then handed me a clipboard with a stack of forms. "Aline Turner will see you in a few minutes. Have a seat." The waiting area was a row of mismatched chairs and a vending machine that still advertised prices in quarters, the kind of place where bad news lived. A woman in a gray blazer and flats appeared 10 minutes later, mid-20s, sharp, polite, eyes that tried to be kind but had seen too much. "Mrs. Callahan, I'm Aline." We sat in a small office with one window that didn't open. She asked questions, same as everyone else had. Full name, date of birth, income, medical history, criminal record. "Do you have any experience raising children?" she asked without a trace of irony. I looked at her. "I raised Mark, alone, from the time he was 8. She nodded and kept writing. "And if custody were granted, would you be the primary caregiver?" "I'm the only one left," I said. "That baby has no one else. I don't want him in the system." She looked at me evenly. "I understand, but there's a process." So I started it. Fingerprinting, background checks, psychological evaluation, home inspection, parenting classes, the full obstacle course. Aline handed me a packet. "These are your next steps. Once they're complete, we can schedule a custody hearing, but for now, the baby remains in state care." "He has a name," I said, louder than I meant to. "He deserves a name." She blinked, surprised. "Has he been named?" "No, but he should be." I took a breath. Mark always said if he had a boy, he'd name him Benjamin, after my father. Aline nodded slowly. "We'll put that in the file. Benjamin Callahan." It didn't change anything, not officially, but it mattered. It meant he existed. Afterward, I drove straight to the hospital. The nurses in NICU had started to recognize me. One of them, a short woman named Renee with pink glasses and a sleeve tattoo, smiled when she saw me. "He's stronger today," she said. "Gained 3 ounces." 3 ounces, like gold. She let me sit next to the incubator for 30 minutes. I watched Benjamin sleep, his tiny fingers curled, his lashes long, like Mark's were when he was little. I whispered to him about how the world was messy but full of second chances. I promised I'd fight for him. When visiting hours were over, Renee touched my shoulder. "You're doing good, Grandma," she said. I didn't cry until I got back in the car. That night, I dug through the few things of Mark's I hadn't already boxed up. His yearbooks, his high school ID, his college notebooks, filled with equations I couldn't make sense of. I was looking for something, I think. A thread, a clue. And I found one. Stuffed inside the back of an old planner was a folded receipt from a storage facility 2 towns over, dated just 2 weeks before he disappeared. 1 unit rented under his name. Why hadn't the police found that? I grabbed my coat and drove. The storage facility sat behind a pawn shop and a vape store off Route 39. A tall chain-link fence surrounded the lot, and the only light came from a flickering bulb above the keypad. I typed in the unit number, 42B, and the manager buzzed me in. The metal door groaned when I lifted it. The air inside smelled like dust and cardboard. There were 3 boxes. That's it. 3 cardboard boxes, each labeled in Mark's handwriting. "Do not open legal documents." I opened the first one. Inside were manila folders. Bank statements, investment accounts, copies of insurance policies. Mark had been smart, careful. There was a copy of his will, too, unsigned but typed and dated. It named a beneficiary, any living biological child born of my marriage. Not Julie, not me, the baby. He knew. Mark knew Julie was pregnant. Box 2 had more folders, but also a notebook, plain, spiral-bound. Inside were journal entries. The first few were innocuous, work stuff, client frustrations. But then they shifted. Julie's been lying. I know it. I asked her where she was last Thursday. She said the office, but I checked. She quit that job 3 weeks ago. I don't know what she's hiding. I found a hidden phone in her closet today. Numbers I don't recognize. Texts about the plan. She said it was nothing. I didn't press. She's pregnant. She hasn't told me. But I found the test. Positive. Why would she hide it? She wants me gone. I see it now. The way she looks at me like she's waiting. For what? If anything happens to me, it's her. I want this on record. It's her. Check the brakes. I sat there back against the cold metal wall of that storage unit, notebook in my lap, heart cracking in two. My son had seen it coming, and no one listened. No one saw. Until it was too late. I left that storage unit with shaking hands and a bag of evidence heavier than it looked. The night was cold, sharp, the kind that slips through your coat and straight into your bones. I drove home without the radio, without thought, just white noise and headlights, and the growing sense that I was about to step into something much larger than I'd ever wanted. When I got home, I called Detective Laramie. She answered on the second ring. "I have something you need to see," I said. "Something Mark left behind." She was at my house 20 minutes later. No sirens, no uniform, just a knock on the door and that steady presence of someone who wasn't afraid of bad news. We sat at my kitchen table, same one I used to help Mark with his algebra on, and I laid everything out. The journal, the unsigned will, the bank files, the photocopied receipts. She took her time reading. I didn't say much. I watched the way her eyes narrowed, the way she tapped her pen once for every page she turned. When she got to the journal entries, the last 3 especially, she looked up at me. "He knew," I said. Mark knew she was planning something. He didn't know what, but he felt it. He wrote it down so someone would find it. She nodded slowly. "This changes everything." "You think she killed him?" "I think she arranged something. Paid someone, maybe. If she tampered with the brakes like he suspected, then it was premeditated. That's murder, Betty." The words sat there between us, clean and cruel. She collected the files, carefully bagging each one. "We'll process this as evidence. This journal, this is gold. The entries line up with the timeline of his disappearance. They show motive, fear, intent. It'll help, especially once we find her." "You really think she's still in the country?" Laramie hesitated. "We don't know, but she's smart, strategic. If she's still close, she's not using her own name. She's either holed up somewhere or she's waiting." "For what?" Laramie looked me straight in the eye. "For the baby. For the money." That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I kept the hallway light on like I was 10 years old again. Every creak of the house, every branch tapping against the glass, I flinched. The paranoia had crept in like damp rot. Slow, quiet, certain. I kept checking the locks. By morning, I looked like I hadn't slept in a month. I drove to the hospital anyway. Benjamin and I had started thinking of him that way, not the baby, had been moved to a bassinet. No more tubes. No more wires. Just warm blankets and soft skin and tiny fists that opened and closed like he was dreaming of holding something he didn't understand yet. Eloise, the nurse, smiled when she saw me. "He's doing well," she said. "Really well. He took a full bottle this morning." I sat beside his crib, gently touched his cheek. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's Grandma." It still felt new, the word, like a borrowed coat that hadn't broken in yet. He squirmed in response, a little frown on his face. "He knows your voice," Eloise said. "He quiets down when you speak. We've noticed." I hadn't cried in 2 days. That was a record. But hearing that he knew me, undid me. I wiped my eyes, kissed his forehead, and whispered a promise. "I'm going to bring you home. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to bring you home." That afternoon, Aline called. "We have a date for the preliminary custody hearing," she said. 3 weeks from tomorrow. You'll need to have your references submitted, background checks complete, and your medical clearance by then. I already have 2 references lined up. I'll schedule the physical this week. Good. The judge will want to see commitment. And just to remind you, this is for temporary custody. Permanent placement could take another 3 to 6 months. I swallowed my frustration. Temporary is fine, as long as I can take care of him. "There's one more thing," she said, voice shifting to something heavier. "Julie hasn't officially been charged yet. She's still just a person of interest. That complicates things." She tried to drown him. "Yes, but until we locate her, until there's a formal charge, she still has parental rights on paper." I almost dropped the phone. "You're saying she could come back and take him?" "I'm saying the law is slow, Betty, and she has the advantage of being invisible right now." That night, I called Father Anthony. I needed someone to ground me. He came over around 8 with a container of beef stew and that old book of Psalms he always carried like a security blanket. We sat on the back porch, the same porch I'd watched Julie from the day she disappeared. The lake was still, the kind of stillness that feels unnatural, like it knows something's coming. "I found Mark's journal," I told him. He didn't flinch. "What did it say?" That he knew she was going to do something, that he found the pregnancy test, that he changed his will. Father Anthony bowed his head. Then he did what a father's supposed to do. He protected his child. Too late. Maybe, but not entirely. He left you a trail. That baby, Benjamin, he's still here. And that means Mark succeeded in some way. I nodded, though it felt hollow. After he left, I stood in Benjamin's future nursery, the room that used to be Mark's, still lined with soccer trophies and old posters of Pearl Jam and The Matrix. I imagined what it would look like. The crib, the rocking chair, the mobile. I imagined his laugh, his first step, his first word. And then I thought of Julie, out there, waiting, plotting. Because if she was smart enough to fake a disappearance, smart enough to hide a pregnancy for 9 months, smart enough to disappear without a trace, she was smart enough to come back. And I didn't know when, but I knew this. She wouldn't stop, and I'd have to be ready when she did. I had the nightmare again the night before my doctor's appointment. In it, I'm standing at the edge of Meridian Lake, barefoot, water lapping at my ankles. The sky above is wrong, greenish, heavy, like a bruise. There's the suitcase again, only it's not sinking this time. It's floating, wide open, and I can see Benjamin inside, his tiny arms outstretched, his mouth forming a silent cry. I reach for him, but the water pulls him farther out. Suddenly, I'm no longer alone. Julie stands next to me, but she's not the same. Her hair is long again, her face clean, her smile sweet, the way she looked the first time I met her. She leans close and whispers, "You always wanted to be his mother, didn't you?" And then the lake swallows the baby whole. I wake up gasping, soaked in sweat, my pillow damp with tears I didn't remember crying. That morning I drove to the clinic on 5th and Merrill. Dr. Crane was already waiting. He's been my physician for years, a kind, no-nonsense man who smells faintly of aftershave and menthol lozenges. "You're taking on quite a responsibility," he said, eyes scanning the form I'd handed over. "Most women your age are retiring, not changing diapers." "I know how old I am, doctor." He raised a brow but didn't argue, just took my vitals, asked about my arthritis, checked my heart and lungs, asked the usual questions. "Any recent trauma?" I paused. "My son's child was found in a lake. His mother tried to kill him. I pulled him out. I've been at the hospital nearly every day since. I haven't been sleeping. I haven't been eating well. But other than that, no, nothing major. He looked up slowly. Betty, I'm not giving up this baby, Tom. I didn't say you should. I just want to make sure your body's on the same page as your heart. When the exam was done, he signed the form without further protest. I took it, folded it neatly, and thanked him. I was halfway to the parking lot when my phone rang. Unknown number. Again. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, thinking of all the things Julie might say next, what venom she might pour into my ear. But when I answered, the voice wasn't hers. It was Laramie. "We found something," she said. "You need to come in." Her tone didn't offer room to argue. I drove straight to the station. They led me past the usual desks and bullpen chatter into the small back conference room with no windows. The table was cluttered with files and a laptop already open to a paused video. Laramie stood at the head of the table with two other detectives. One I recognized, the other I didn't. "This was sent to our tip line late last night," she said, gesturing toward the laptop. "No return address, no traceable metadata, but you need to see it." She hit play. The video was grainy, shot on what looked like an old security camera mounted high on a wall. Timestamp 3:24 a.m., a dark garage. No sound. At first, nothing. Then headlights. A car pulls in. A silver Prius. My breath caught. Julie steps out. Her hair is longer again, her frame slimmer, but it's her. She opens the trunk, and then, God help me, she pulls out the suitcase. The same one. She drags it into the center of the frame, kneels beside it. The video skips a second. Then she stands. Wipes her hands on her jeans. She looks up, right into the camera, and smiles. The screen goes black. "That was 2 nights before you saw her at the lake," Laramie said. "That's not footage from the lake area. That garage is in East Haddon, a storage facility under the name Lisa Johansson. Fake ID, fake address, everything fake." So she filmed herself? She wanted it to be found. She's not just hiding, Betty. She's performing. For who? For you. For us. For herself, maybe. The silence in that room felt like a warning. "What does this mean?" I asked. "It means she staged everything. She planned the suitcase, the lake, the timing. It was all deliberate. She wanted you to see her that day." "Why?" "To send a message." "But what message?" One of the other detectives spoke for the first time. "That she's still in control." I leaned back in the chair. My chest ached with dread. "And the baby? You're sure he's Mark's?" "Confirmed by 2 separate labs now, and we've also confirmed that Mark changed his will 6 months before his disappearance. Everything, life insurance, assets, is held in trust for his child. Julie gets nothing." There it was, motive, clean, pure, obvious, but no one wanted to say it outright. "She killed him," I whispered. "She waited until he updated his will. She knew she was pregnant and she killed him. Then she tried to kill the baby too, to clear the path to the money." Laramie nodded. "That's the theory we're working with, but until we find her, it's just theory." I leaned forward. "She's going to try again. She's not finished." Laramie looked me in the eye. "We agree. That's why we're stepping up surveillance. Starting today, you'll have a patrol car outside your house, and we're relocating Benjamin." "What?" "Temporarily, just until we get her. Until we know for sure she's not going to try something drastic." "No, he stays at the hospital. He's safe there." "She already got in once. That's how she filmed that security footage. She's careful, but she's escalating. We need to be proactive." I wanted to scream, to flip the table and remind them who pulled that baby from the water, who showed up, who didn't look away. But instead, I said, "Where?" Laramie hesitated. "We have a safe house, monitored, staffed with medical personnel. He'll be guarded." "And who's going with him?" "You." That stunned me. "You want me in the safe house?" "You're the only one he knows. And if Julie's watching, we want her to believe you're still at home, that you're alone, that the baby's vulnerable." "Bait," I was the bait. I should have said no. I should have stormed out. But instead, I said, "When do we leave?" That night, I was given 1 hour to pack, only essentials, 1 suitcase for me, 1 diaper bag for Benjamin, his formula, his bottles, his new onesies with the little owls on them. I packed them all with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The patrol car drove us to the safe house, a low, nondescript ranch-style home on the outskirts of town with blackout curtains and reinforced doors. Inside, it was sterile, too clean, like someone had just scrubbed the whole place of anything human. But Benjamin was there, in a crib in the back bedroom, already sleeping, his soft breath steady. I stood over him and whispered, "I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." The house had cameras, panic buttons, a security team on rotation, but I still didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the feed on the small monitor next to me, one hand on the baby monitor, the other on the phone. At 3:18 a.m., the front porch camera flickered, then went black. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I reached for the panic button, and that's when the back window creaked. The creak was soft, almost innocent, like wood settling. But it wasn't. You learn the sounds of a house fast, especially when your life might depend on it. This was different. Too slow. Too intentional. It came from the back room, the one where Benjamin was sleeping. I didn't hesitate. I hit the panic button with the flat of my hand. It gave a loud beep, followed by silence. No alarm. No flashing light. Just a signal to whoever was watching the feed. Then I grabbed the baby monitor and ran. The hallway felt too long. I burst into the nursery like a storm. Benjamin was still asleep, one tiny fist balled up by his cheek, the soft sound of his breath unchanged. The window on the far wall was cracked open maybe 2 inches, just enough to notice, just enough to scare the hell out of me. There were no footprints, no shadows, no sound of anyone running. But something had changed. The curtain had shifted. A chair by the wall was off angle. Something had brushed against the crib. I could tell by the indent in the rug. I scooped Benjamin up, held him tight, his body warm and heavy against mine. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. A moment later, the front door slammed open and 2 officers stormed in. Weapons drawn, barking orders. They cleared the rooms one by one, fast and loud, but the house was empty. Whoever had come to the window, if they came at all, was gone. We reviewed the porch camera. It flickered for 7 seconds, then went black. "Signal jam," one of the techs said. "Someone knew what they were doing." The officers swept the perimeter. Nothing. And then they found it. A piece of torn fabric caught on the chain-link fence out back. Black. Nylon. Too clean to have been there long. They bagged it, dusted it, but no fingerprints. No fibers. Just a trace of oil residue, like from gloves. Julie? Probably. But they couldn't say for sure. That morning, Laramie came by. "This was a warning," she said. "She's watching you. She knew you were here. She wanted you to know it." I stood in the kitchen of that little safe house. Benjamin on my hip, his tiny head tucked under my chin, and I felt something inside me go still, not afraid, not panicked, ready. "She wants me scared," I said. "She thinks fear will keep me quiet, keep me compliant." "She's underestimating you," Laramie said. "Then let her." I made a decision that morning. No more hiding, no more waiting for the next creak, the next shadow, the next message. Julie wanted control. Over Mark, over the money, over the narrative. I wasn't giving it to her. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the local paper. An old friend of mine, Harold Reyes, ran the Meridian Gazette. We went to school together. He'd always had a good nose for stories, and more importantly, he never owed Julie anything. I told him I had something he needed to see. We met at his office downtown. Benjamin strapped to my chest, sleeping soundly through it all. I brought the journal, the video stills, the birth records, the revised will. I laid it all out on his desk, one piece at a time. "You're telling me this woman faked your son's disappearance. Gave birth to his child in secret, tried to murder the baby, and now she's on the run? Yes. And the police are letting you play house in a safe bunker while she circles like a shark? Pretty much. Harold leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. That's insane. It's the truth. And you want me to print it? I nodded. She's counting on silence. She's counting on people being too embarrassed or too afraid to talk. But if I go public, if I take her mask off in front of the whole town, maybe she'll make a mistake. Maybe someone will recognize her. Maybe she'll come out of hiding. You're playing with fire. She started the fire. I'm just holding a mirror up to it. He studied me for a long time, then nodded. Okay, I'll run it. But it'll take a couple of days. Make it front page, I said. Use her name, use her picture. Tell them everything. When I got back to the safe house, the silence felt different. Not so much like a trap, more like the breath before a storm. Benjamin was due for another bottle. I sat on the couch, fed him slowly, felt his little fingers wrap around mine. He looked up at me with those eyes, those Callahan eyes, and I felt something shift. I wasn't just trying to protect him anymore. I was going to reclaim something. For Mark. For myself. Julie thought she buried the truth at the bottom of the lake. But the thing about lakes, eventually, they spit back what doesn't belong. That night, I sat by the baby monitor again, just like the one before. Around 2:11 a.m., the phone rang. No caller ID. I didn't answer this time. I let it go to voicemail. And when I played the message, there was no voice, just the sound of water. And then, faint but unmistakable, a lullaby. I recognized the tune. Julie had hummed it at the courthouse wedding reception, a song her mother used to sing, she once told me, but she hadn't mentioned her mother in years. That gave me an idea. Julie's mother lived in a yellow house with peeling trim and a rusting swing set out front, the kind that hasn't squeaked in years but still tells you kids used to laugh there. The house sat on a hill in Greystone, 45 minutes outside of town, past the highway, past the train tracks, past the place where most people stop asking questions. Her name was Mary Ann. We'd only met once, briefly, at a Thanksgiving dinner Julie hosted during their first year of marriage. She'd been quiet, awkward, overdone in makeup and perfume. She brought a sweet potato casserole that no one touched and left early, claiming a migraine. Julie never talked about her after that, but I remembered the address. I remembered the way she looked at Mark when she thought no one was watching, like he was a ticking bomb she didn't trust in her daughter's hands. I hadn't meant to go. I didn't plan it, didn't clear it with Laramie, didn't even tell the nurse at the safe house. But when I woke that morning, the lullaby still echoing in my ears, I knew exactly what I had to do. I left Benjamin with the nurse, said I needed fresh air, and drove. The sky was low and gray, pressing down on the world. When I pulled up to the house, Mary Ann was already outside, wearing a heavy cardigan and gardening gloves, tugging at a weed that had grown through a crack in the walkway. She looked up, startled. "Mrs. Callahan?" "Betty," I said, stepping out. "We need to talk." She didn't ask why. She just looked at me for a long second, then nodded. Inside, the house smelled like dust and lemon cleaner, the kind of place that hasn't changed furniture since the Reagan administration. Lace curtains, ceramic angels, a framed photo of Julie as a teenager, braces, messy ponytail, a tight smile that never quite reached her eyes. We sat in the living room. She offered coffee. I declined. "Julie's missing," I said. Mary Ann blinked. "So I heard. She left a baby at the lake. Tried to drown him." Her eyes didn't widen. No gasp, no clutch of the pearls. "She was always dramatic," Mary Ann said finally. "Dramatic?" I snapped. "She tried to kill her own child." At that, she flinched. "I'm not surprised," she whispered. That stopped me cold. "Excuse me?" Mary Ann looked down at her lap, then up at the photo of her daughter on the mantel. She was always good at disappearing, even as a little girl. When things didn't go her way, she'd vanish, hide for hours. I once found her under the porch with a flashlight and a stack of crackers. She was 5. That's not the same as... No, it's not. But you want to know where she learned it? She turned and looked me square in the face. She watched me do it. Over and over. I ran from things, too. From men, from debts, from truth. Julie grew up in the backseat of fear. That kind of childhood, it rots you. I didn't know what to say to that. She stood, walked to a small drawer in the side table, pulled out a thin, worn envelope. She sent this 6 months ago. No return address, no name, just M. I didn't open it until last week. She handed it to me. Inside was a single photo. Julie, heavily pregnant, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. Dark hair, lean build, arm around her shoulder. They were on a beach, somewhere warm, somewhere far, scrawled on the back in her unmistakable handwriting. You always said I'd ruin everything. Just wait. I'll ruin the silence too. I stared at the man in the photo. Not Mark, not even close. But the smile, hers, was the same smile she wore the day she dropped that suitcase into the lake. Not fear, not regret. Satisfaction. Who is he? I asked. I don't know, Marianne said. Never seen him before. But I think she wanted me to know she didn't need me, that she had someone new. I sat back, processing. If that man was the father, then the baby wasn't Mark's, but the DNA test, unless... My breath caught. Is it possible, I said slowly, that she used a surrogate? Or swapped samples? Artificial insemination with Mark's DNA? Marianne just stared. She could have stolen something, a sample, from before he disappeared, and used it, to make sure the baby had his DNA. She'd never do that, Marianne said. I laughed bitterly. She tried to drown a newborn in a suitcase. I think the line's been crossed. Suddenly, it all began to click. Julie hadn't just wanted to disappear. She'd wanted to erase Mark, to build a version of reality where she still benefited from him, financially, legally, but without the burden of his presence. Use his DNA, name the baby, secure the will, then dispose of the last witness. I stood. Thank you, I said. You've helped more than you know. As I reached the door, she called after me. Betty? I turned. She won't stop, not until she wins, or until someone stops her. I nodded. I know. On the drive back, my mind raced. The photo, the man, the timeline, the DNA. I called Laramie. I think Julie planned this pregnancy, I told her. Artificial, calculated. She needed a baby with Mark's DNA so she could inherit the trust. There was a pause. You're not the first to think it, she said. We're looking into medical records, fertility clinics, but it's a long road. I can shorten it, I said. I have her mother's envelope, postmarked. We can trace where she was 6 months ago. Laramie exhaled. You're good at this, Betty. I'm angry, I said. That's not the same thing. That night, back at the safe house, I sat beside Benjamin's crib. He was asleep again, one hand open, chest rising in gentle rhythm. I watched him for a long time. Julie had tried to drown him, but I wasn't going to let her drown the truth, too. The article ran in the paper the next morning. Front page. Woman wanted in connection with infant found at Meridian Lake. Missing husband's mother speaks out. Julie's face was on every screen in town, and 32 minutes after the paper hit stands, a new voicemail appeared on my phone. Just one word this time, a whisper. Mistake. By the time I finished listening to that voicemail, there were already 2 squad cars circling the block outside the safe house. Laramie called within the hour. She's rattled, she said. That message? It wasn't for the police. It was for you. I didn't need her to tell me that. I could feel it in my gut. That cold, hollow twist I used to get when Mark was lying to me as a teenager. Not malicious lies, just scared ones. The kind that meant I did something I can't undo. Julie had done a lot of those. Laramie went on, We traced the envelope your friend Harold got at the Gazette. postmarked from a small town near Gulf Shores, Alabama. Guess what's nearby? A fertility clinic. Bingo. Private, boutique. No digital records, paper only. Their founder died last year, and operations have been minimal since. But we found an appointment under the name Jane Callahan, 2 months before Mark's disappearance. I gripped the phone tighter. That's it, she used him. She took a sample. Looks that way. Our guess is she kept it frozen, had it used months later. Not illegal in itself, unfortunately, but the surrounding circumstances? We'll build a case. She used Mark like a resource, I said, then tried to destroy every trace of him, including the child. We believe that now, but proving it takes time, and while we chase paperwork and jurisdictional delays, she's still out there. Then bait her, I said. Laramie paused. Betty, use me, I said. You already are. Let's make it official. That night, we staged the break. A small post went up on a local community board, the kind of site Julie would definitely monitor, posed as a leak. Betty Callahan moves baby from safe house to hospital following internal dispute. Source, hospital nurse. Family refuses comment. The article included a blurry photo of the back of my car, taken and posted by an anonymous passerby. What Julie wouldn't know was that the baby wasn't Benjamin. It was a weighted decoy, same blanket, same carrier, a mannequin so convincing even I flinched when I first saw it. Benjamin stayed at the real hospital, locked down tighter than a vault. I drove the decoy home myself. It felt theatrical, even foolish, like the third act of a soap opera where everyone pretends to die so they can come back in a flash of vengeance. But Julie believed in shows, in performance. This wasn't for her heart. This was for her pride. And the one thing I'd learned about Julie, you don't shame her without paying for it. We just needed her to try. 2 days passed. Nothing. On the third, a break. Laramie called me just after dusk. There's been a ping. Where? An ATM in Winston County, a withdrawal of $80. The camera got her face, though it's disguised. Still, it's her. How far is Winston? 30 miles, tops. The plan accelerated. We doubled the patrol near the house, installed motion lights and a second hidden camera pointed at the nursery window. I took long walks with the baby decoy in the carrier, right past the gas station, right through the center of town. We needed her to see me, and she did. Late on a Saturday night, Laramie's phone lit up with a silent alert. Motion detected. Rear porch. Figure on camera. Hoodie. Slender build. Face turned from the lens. We waited. 3 minutes later, the nursery window. Cracked open. Same as before. This time, we were ready. Laramie and 2 officers moved fast and silent like predators. But the figure was gone before they even crossed the lawn, vanished into the woods behind the house like mist. They found a footprint this time, deep, sharp. Women's hiking boot, size 8. Beside it, a scrap of paper, folded tight, soaked at the edges. Inside, 1 line. You don't get to keep what's mine. I stared at that note for a long time. She's escalating, Laramie said. She's unraveling, I corrected. Julie didn't know how to lose. She'd grown up watching her mother bolt from every consequence, from every regret. She thought running was control. She thought silence was power. But now the town was talking. Neighbors stopped me in the pharmacy, in the church parking lot, in the grocery store, whispered, I always thought something was off about her, or she looked right through people. One woman from the PTA leaned close and said, she fired my son from her agency because he wore the wrong cologne, said it gave her a headache. Little by little, Julie was being dismantled, not by bullets, not by sirens, but by reputation, by exposure. She'd counted on the town's politeness, its refusal to look too closely, but now? The magnifying glass was warm and focused, and people started to remember things. A cashier from the gas station came forward, said Julie had been in weeks before Mark's disappearance, asking about the security cameras. Odd questions, she said, like someone planning a route. A former coworker from her marketing job confessed she'd once heard Julie on the phone saying, "Once he's gone, it's all mine." Still circumstantial. But enough to paint a portrait, enough to convince a judge to issue a formal warrant, enough to freeze her assets. The noose was tightening, but it wasn't tight enough. Then came the letter, delivered to my front door in an unmarked envelope. Inside, a single photograph of me holding Benjamin outside the safe house, walking to the car, taken from the trees. I felt the nausea rise, bitter and thick. She'd been closer than we thought. On the back of the photo, 3 words, written in blocky, careful script. "Not your blood." I read it twice, then a third time. My hand shook, but I didn't cry, because I already knew, I already suspected. She wasn't just threatening me. She was trying to dismantle the very thing I'd come to love. But here's the truth she never understood. Blood doesn't raise a child. Love does. And Julie, for all her planning, her brilliance, her twisted games, had no idea what love actually looked like. But I was going to show her, on my terms, in public, where everyone could see. I kept that photograph on the table for 2 days, face down, until the edges started to curl. I didn't show it to Laramie, not right away. I needed time to sit with it, to let the weight of it sink in. Not your blood. She thought that would break me, but she'd miscalculated something important. I'd spent 20 years raising a boy who looked nothing like me. Mark was adopted. Julie knew that. Everyone in town did. I thought she was trying to gut me with a truth I'd already lived and embraced. But then I realized she wasn't aiming at me. She was aiming at Benjamin. She wanted to cast doubt, to make it seem like he didn't belong in our family, like he didn't deserve the name Callahan. If she couldn't kill him in the lake, she'd try to drown him in paperwork, in questions, in court. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not one of the old guard from town, not someone who played golf with judges or owed favors to anyone's cousin. I called a woman named Ruth Delaney, a custody specialist from Greenville, 2 counties over, known for biting harder than she barked. We met that afternoon in her office, all glass and chrome and the smell of dry ink. I brought Benjamin with me, bundled tight in a knit hat and a blanket I'd started calling his armor. "I want custody," I told her. "Not temporary, permanent, no loopholes, no visitation rights, nothing." She studied me with calm, clinical eyes. "You're asking to terminate the mother's parental rights. She tried to kill him. She disappeared. She sent me threats. Do you have proof?" "Yes." I handed her the files, the police statements, the video stills, the DNA test, the photo from the woods, the letter. She flipped through them in silence, her eyes narrowing slightly as she read. When she got to the photograph, Julie's latest threat, she turned it over and read the words. Then again. "Cruel," she muttered. "Yes." Ruth tapped the desk twice, then leaned forward. "We'll file for emergency guardianship on top of your temporary custody request. If granted, you'll have sole authority. No one, not even the birth mother, can remove him from your care without a court reversal. And if she shows up at court, then she'll finally have to explain herself." That night, I called Laramie and told her everything. She came by the safe house in plain clothes, no badge, no notebook, just tired eyes and a folder under one arm. "I've got something too," she said, setting the folder down. Inside, bank records, Julie's, all of them frozen just as we hoped. But one account had a new development, a small wire transfer, flagged by an algorithm. She'd managed to send $5,000 to a bank in Sarasota, Florida. The recipient? A man named Anthony Bell. I said the name out loud. Laramie nodded. "He's the man in the photo, the one on the beach. We finally got a match through DMV records." "Boyfriend?" "Maybe, but it's deeper. He's been linked to 2 other women who disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Charges never stuck. He's slippery. And now he's tied to Julie. We think he's helping her move. That opened a whole new set of fears. If she's trying to take Benjamin across state lines, we're watching all major highways and transit points. She hasn't made a move, yet. I stood by the window then, watching the moonlight spill across the porch. She's getting desperate, I said. Yes, Laramie said, and desperation makes people sloppy. The next morning, I returned to the hospital to visit Benjamin. It was a short visit, just long enough to see him, hold him, whisper promises in his tiny ear. I brought him a small stuffed fox. He gripped it in his sleep like it was an anchor. As I left the hospital, the receptionist handed me a manila envelope. This was left for you. No name, no return address. Inside, a court summons. Filed in New Haven County Court in Julie's name. A request for restoration of parental rights and immediate revocation of guardianship. I nearly dropped it right there in the lobby. I flipped to the last page. Hearing date, 2 weeks. Location, New Haven. Jurisdiction trick. She was trying to pull the case out of our county, trying to find a more sympathetic judge, one with no knowledge of her record, one who might see me as the meddling mother-in-law and her as the struggling young mother. And worse, she'd listed her address as a temporary shelter for victims of domestic abuse. The game had shifted again. She's claiming Mark abused her, I told Ruth, back in her office. Ruth didn't blink. That's where this usually goes. She'll try to frame the narrative. She's not hiding anymore. She's flipping the script. She's going to lie under oath. Then we'll make sure it's the last lie she tells. It all felt upside down. I'd done everything right. Saved a life. Told the truth. Exposed a crime. And still, I was the one being dragged into court, forced to explain why I'd opened a suitcase at the bottom of a lake and chosen to love what I found inside. Julie was throwing everything she had into this last trick, the performance of a lifetime. But the thing about a great performance? It falls apart under the wrong light, and I was about to bring the spotlight. The courtroom in New Haven smelled like old coffee and polish, that strange mix of authority and decay. High ceilings, faded flags, pew-like benches, the kind of place that feels larger than you on purpose. I sat at the petitioner's table in a charcoal blazer, Benjamin in my lap. Ruth sat beside me, her legal pad bare except for a single line of typed notes and a tabbed binder thicker than a Bible. Across the aisle, Julie sat with her own attorney, a slick man with expensive shoes and the smile of someone who's used to winning on technicalities. And her, Julie. Her hair was a soft brown again, curled at the ends, her makeup precise but understated, a blue dress with a high neckline and pearl earrings. She looked maternal, chosen, saintly even. She didn't look like someone who'd nearly drowned her son, but I knew better. She didn't look at me, not once, just kept her eyes on Benjamin, tracking his every movement like she was trying to memorize him before he slipped through her fingers for good. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Keller, entered with that practiced grace of someone who's seen it all. She took her seat, read through the docket notes, and looked up. This hearing will determine the temporary placement and guardianship of the minor child known as Benjamin Callahan. Petitioner, Betty Callahan. Respondent, Julie Callahan. The court acknowledges both parties are related to the child and both claim legal standing. Julie's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, my client has been the subject of a malicious campaign of misinformation and reputational sabotage. She is the biological mother of the child, has never relinquished her rights, and is here today to restore custody. All she wants is to reunite with her son. Reunite? Like they'd been tragically separated in a war, like she hadn't zipped him into a suitcase. She has been cooperative with the law. She disappeared for weeks, Ruth interrupted, while under active investigation. The judge held up a hand. We'll have order. Ms. Delaney, you'll have your turn. Ruth stood, her voice clear and calm. Your Honor, my client is the maternal grandmother of a child found abandoned in a lake. That's not poetic. That's literal. He was left in a sealed suitcase and thrown into the water. We have photographic evidence. We have video evidence. We have medical records. And we have a pending criminal investigation naming Ms. Callahan as the primary suspect. She has not been charged, Julie's attorney shot back. Not yet, Ruth said, but she's not here seeking justice. She's here seeking leverage. The judge looked over her glasses at Julie. Ms. Callahan, would you like to speak? Julie rose slowly. Her eyes were wet already. Actress tears. I could smell it from across the aisle. I was scared, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know who to trust. Mark was gone. The police wouldn't help. My pregnancy was complicated. I made mistakes, but I never abandoned my son. I thought he was dead when I left him. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. Gasps from the gallery. One woman clutched her pearls like we were in a church pew. Julie's lawyer placed a hand over hers. And now? Judge Keller asked. Julie sniffed. Now I want to be his mother again. I want to heal. I want to be better. I stood. Your Honor, may I? The judge nodded. I walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, holding Benjamin. He was calm, sleepy-eyed, oblivious to the weight of the room. My name is Betty Callahan, I said. I raised Mark from the time he was 8. I took a second job to send him to college. I helped him start his business. I buried him 3 years ago. Or I tried to. But there was nothing left to bury. The courtroom was silent. This woman, I said, pointing gently, lied to everyone. She didn't report Mark missing. She forged paperwork. She moved money. She used his DNA, I don't know how, but she did, and she gave birth to this child. Then she tried to erase him. Julie's attorney started to object. I have the video, Ruth said, standing now, and the note she left behind, and the photograph she took from the woods, and the voicemail where she whispered, "You don't get to keep what's mine." Judge Keller held up a hand. Miss Callahan, is that your voice on the voicemail? Julie didn't answer. Miss Callahan? Still nothing. The judge leaned back in her chair. I've reviewed the documentation. I've read the psychological evaluation. I've watched the surveillance footage from the night Miss Callahan approached the safe house. I believe this court has seen enough. My breath caught in my throat. She continued, custody, permanent and legal, is granted to the petitioner, Betty Callahan. Full parental rights of the respondent, Julie Callahan, are hereby terminated, pending the outcome of any criminal proceedings. Julie slumped. Her mask cracked just enough to show the bones beneath. I'll appeal, she said, her voice a hiss. You'll be in jail by then, Ruth replied. Court adjourned. As we exited the courtroom, reporters circled like birds. I held Benjamin tighter. No comment, no statement, just the truth in my arms. That night, back at home, the lake was still. The breeze was cool. I stood by the window and watched the moon rise, the baby asleep in the crib I'd assembled with hands that no longer shook. A different kind of quiet had settled. Not fear, not tension, something closer to peace. But I knew better than to believe it would last. Julie wasn't done, not yet, because people like her never leave quietly. And sure enough, the next morning, tucked inside my mailbox, was a final letter. No return address, no stamp. Just my name, inside, a blank birth certificate, and one sentence scribbled in red ink. He's not the only one. I read the letter 5 times before I let myself sit down. Each time I read that sentence, he's not the only one. The same cold chill crawled up my spine and settled behind my eyes. It wasn't just a threat. It was a riddle. And I knew Julie well enough now to understand she never wasted words. If she wrote it, it meant something. He's not the only one. Not the only child. Not the only Mark. Not the only person she'd tried to erase. I stared at the blank birth certificate, clean, unused, like a trap waiting to be baited. I called Ruth first. She left a new note, birth certificate, no names. There was a pause on the line. Then, we'll notify Laramie and we'll run a check through vital records. If there's another child, we'll find the paperwork trail. But Betty, this could be smoke. No, I said. Julie doesn't bluff. She hints. She performs, but she doesn't bluff. I hung up and stared at Benjamin sleeping in the bassinet. He'd started to turn his head more deliberately now, focusing on faces. Every time he locked eyes with me, something like joy would flicker across his features, just for a second and vanish before I could name it. Was there another baby? The idea felt impossible. But then again, so had everything else. I called Marianne next, Julie's mother. She didn't answer, but she called back 15 minutes later, out of breath, her voice shaky. "She was here," she whispered, "this morning." My whole body went still. What? She knocked on the door at 6 a.m. I didn't even recognize her at first. She's dyed her hair blonde, short now, different teeth. I thought she was a neighbor, and until she spoke. What did she say? Marianne's voice broke. She asked if I still had the crib. I felt a spike of dread hit my throat. She said she needed it back, Marianne continued. Said she was starting over. Said the boy wasn't going to work out, but that she had a new plan, that this one would be better. I sat down slowly. This one. She didn't explain, just left. No car, no goodbye, just that sentence. Laramie arrived within the hour. We combed the woods behind Marianne's house, checked every camera in a 4-block radius, flagged every Craigslist post selling baby items, but nothing turned up. The real break came 2 days later. A nurse at a private birthing center on the east side of Manchester saw the newspaper article, the one with Julie's face and my name, and called Laramie. "I think she was here," the nurse said. 6 months ago, she used the name Lauren Briggs, paid in cash, gave birth to a baby girl. We drove out there that same day. The center was a converted Victorian house, painted mint green, with a picket fence and ivy creeping up the porch rail. Inside, everything smelled like lavender and sanitizer. She came in the night before, alone, the nurse said. No ID, but very prepared. She said it was a private birth. Didn't want any records filed. We didn't push. It's not illegal here, if the forms are signed. "Where's the baby now?" Laramie asked. She left with it the next morning. No complications, no social worker involved. We didn't realize anything was off until we saw the article. Did she say where she was going? No, but she left a name, for the baby. The nurse walked to a file cabinet and pulled out a handwritten form. First name, Wren. Last name, Briggs. My knees nearly buckled. Wren. That was the name Julie once told me she'd always wanted if she had a daughter. Strong, quiet, sharp, she'd said. Sipping wine across from me on the back deck one spring, a bird that doesn't need to be seen to be dangerous. I remember laughing then. Not anymore. Wren was 6 months old and missing. We filed an alert. Every shelter, hospital, pediatrician within 100 miles received a photo of Julie. 2 new warrants were issued, one for kidnapping, one for endangering a minor. And I? I went home and sat on the nursery floor for hours. Benjamin cooed beside me, chewing on a stuffed giraffe. His eyes were bright, full of discovery, and yet I couldn't stop picturing a baby girl with dark hair and quiet eyes being dragged along in the background of Julie's madness, hidden, forgotten. If Julie had taken one child to secure a will, was she keeping this second child for herself? Was Wren insurance? Or something darker? I didn't have answers. But I had purpose again, because I hadn't saved them all yet. That night, I opened Mark's old laptop. It had sat dusty and unused on the bookshelf behind his old desk. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. I didn't even know if it would turn on. It did. I guessed his password on the 3rd try, October 17, his birthday. There were files, of course, work documents, spreadsheets, photos, but in a folder labeled private, I found a string of emails, all to one person, Tony.Bell73, protonmail.com, Anthony Bell. The man from the beach photo, Julie's supposed boyfriend. The email started friendly, about business, some kind of shared investment opportunity. But they got tense, angry, paranoid. I don't know who you are anymore. You're bleeding her dry. Stay away from my wife. If you contact Julie again, I'll press charges. She's not well. And you're making it worse. I know about the clinic. I know you helped her. This ends now. The last message was dated the day before Mark disappeared. And the subject line? Ren. I sat back in the chair and felt the full weight of what I was holding. Mark had known. He knew Julie was pregnant with a second child. He knew Anthony Bell was involved. And maybe, just maybe, he'd been trying to save both of them. I printed every email. I handed them to Laramie the next morning. She stared at them for a long time and then said something I'll never forget. She didn't just kill Mark, Betty. She made sure no one would even remember he tried to stop her. By the time Laramie traced the IP address from the final email Mark had sent, the trail was already cold. The Proton Mail servers routed everything through so many international relays that even the tech guys shrugged. She was careful, one of them said. Too careful. But it didn't matter. We knew now that Julie hadn't just faked one version of motherhood. She'd created two. One for money, one for control. Benjamin was the legacy. Ren was the insurance. And Mark, he was the inconvenient obstacle between both. That same afternoon, we received a call from a woman named Bethany, a nurse practitioner in Hillsborough, 90 miles south of us. She'd seen Julie's photo on the state alert system and said, I think she came in last week, said her name was Lauren. Baby girl, 6 months. Something was off, so I didn't press too hard, but I remembered the birthmark. What birthmark? I asked. On the baby's left collarbone, a small heart-shaped one. Clear as a stamp. I stared at the receiver like it might bite. Mark had the same birthmark. So did his father. It wasn't proof, but it was close. Bethany faxed over the intake form and a photocopy of Julie's signature. I recognized it instantly. Even in disguise, she couldn't help curling her J's like a child. She's not far, Laramie said. If she's going to a clinic, she's still trying to care for the baby. She's still trying to control the story, I said. She wants us to chase her, but she's slipping. You don't show up to 2 medical facilities in the same month if you're hiding well. She's losing her grip. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, Benjamin curled beside me in his bassinet, his tiny chest rising and falling like the ticking of a quiet clock. And I kept thinking about Ren, where she was. If she was safe, if she knew love, or if she was just a pawn, being dragged through the same wreckage her half-brother had barely escaped. And then the phone rang. No caller ID, just like before. But this time, I answered. There was no sound at first, just soft static. And then, you think you know what's best for everyone, don't you? Julie? Her voice was slower now, frayed at the edges. I didn't answer. I should have left you out of it, she said. I really should have. But you just couldn't stay in your lane. You had to dig. You had to judge. I saved your son, I said quietly. You stole him. You left him to die. She laughed, dry, almost amused. Betty, you're playing at being a saint, but you've always wanted this, haven't you? To be the hero, to be the mother again. You didn't save him. You just replaced what you lost. I didn't replace anything, I said. I inherited a truth you couldn't handle. There was a long pause. Then, you don't know what's coming. Click. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I called Laramie. She's close, I said. And she's getting desperate. That means she's about to do something reckless. I was right. Because the next morning, I found Ren. Or rather, Ren found me. It was a cardboard box on my porch, wrapped in a faded blue blanket. No note, no sound. But inside, blinking up at me, was a baby girl with dark curls and a faint birthmark on her collarbone. I dropped to my knees. Laramie was there in 15 minutes. The EMTs checked Ren. Dehydrated, hungry, scared, but physically unharmed. Why? I asked the question out loud to no one. Why would she give her up like this? Laramie held up a folded sheet of paper, tucked into the bottom of the box. It was handwritten, messy. You win, but don't pretend you didn't want this. You always did. Tell them whatever story you want. The truth is boring. The truth doesn't make you a hero. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just the last note of a woman who'd lost control of her own play. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. Emergency protective custody for Wren. She was placed in the same pediatric care wing as Benjamin. They were side by side in matching cribs, unaware of how close they'd come to being forgotten. I watched them sleep for an hour, and I cried. Not for Julie, but for Mark. For the life he almost had. For the woman he couldn't save. And for the children he left behind. Fragile, innocent pieces of a man who deserved so much better. That night, Laramie sat with me on the porch. They found her car, she said, abandoned near the ridge, full tank of gas, keys inside. Any signs? No. But she's not dead, Betty. You know that, right? This was planned. She gave up Wren because she's not done. She's just pausing. Do you think she'll come back? Yes, she said, but not for a while. She's smart. She'll wait. She'll watch. She'll find another name, another story. I nodded. I'll be ready, I said. Inside, the house felt different. Not haunted, not afraid, just full. 2 cribs now, 2 tiny souls with matching birthmarks and eyes that held too much history. I sat between them and whispered what I should have said long ago. You belong. You both belong. And outside, the wind blew cold across the lake. The day I legally adopted Benjamin and Wren, it rained. Not the hard, punishing kind. It was soft, almost polite, the kind of drizzle that glosses the sidewalks and makes the trees seem greener, the kind that doesn't stop anything, just slows it down. We sat in the county courthouse again, a different room this time. Smaller, warmer, with wood-paneled walls and a sleepy clock that ticked audibly in the silence. No reporters, no threats. Just Ruth, the judge, and a woman from Child Protective Services who wore a daisy pin and kept glancing at the twins with misty eyes. Yes, twins. That's how the paperwork listed them now. Not biologically, but legally. Siblings born of the same storm, survivors of the same mother. I held Wren in one arm and Benjamin in the other. They were heavier now, 9 months old. Both of them, teeth coming in, personalities starting to show. Benjamin liked to be held chest to chest. Wren preferred to sit up, scanning every room like a detective. The judge smiled gently and said, "It's a rare thing to witness this much grace in one place." I didn't smile back, not because I wasn't grateful, I was, but because my joy had changed shape. It wasn't shiny or loud, it was weathered, solid, like an old barn that still holds strong in a storm. After the hearing, Ruth clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Go home, Betty, this part's over." And so I did. Home was louder now. I bought a second crib, a double stroller, started labeling bottles and bibs and schedules like a woman twice my energy and half my age. My knees hurt every morning. My hands ached. My sleep was broken into hour-long patches. And still, I was content in a way I hadn't been since Mark was little. The babies filled the house in ways grief never could. But of course, Julie's shadow still lingered. She was never found. Not by Laramie, not by the FBI, not by the internet sleuths who had taken up her case like a mystery novel. Once the arrest warrants went public, she vanished so completely it almost became a local myth. Some said she'd fled to Canada. Others claimed she was still in the woods, living off-grid, watching us all. I didn't waste energy on that kind of guessing, because I knew something no one else did. Julie would never show her face until she believed the story could be rewritten, until she had a new role to play. And that day would come, maybe in a year, maybe in 10. But when it did, I'd be ready. In the meantime, I did what any mother does. I built a life around the children I loved. I kept a journal of their milestones. The first time Benjamin pulled himself up, the day Wren started babbling back when I read aloud, I made a habit of writing to Mark in those pages. Your daughter has your eyes. Your son has your temper. They're both stubborn and gentle and loud and hungry, just like you. I told them stories about their father, not the ugly parts, not the unraveling, but the man who once stayed up all night with a science project, the boy who asked to sleep with a nightlight until he was 10, the man who called me every Sunday after he moved out, even when he didn't have anything to say. I kept Mark alive through memory. I kept the children alive through love. And the town? It changed too. No more whispers, no more curious glances at the grocery store. People saw me with the twins and smiled now, not with pity, but with something close to reverence. She's the one who saved them. She's the one who stayed. Truth has a way of spreading once you let it breathe. I still walked by the lake sometimes, not to revisit pain, but to measure how far we'd come. There was a new bench near the water line now, donated anonymously. A plaque on it read, "For those who rise again." I don't know who paid for it, but I like to believe it was someone who understood that not every resurrection is loud. Some are slow, quiet, earned. And as for Julie, some nights I'd dream of her, not in violence, not in fear, but in confrontation. We'd be standing face to face in the courtroom again, or on my porch, or in the woods behind the house. In those dreams, she always said the same thing. You don't deserve them. And in the dream, I'd always answer the same way. No, but I chose them, and that matters more. About a year after the adoption, I received a letter. Not email, not a voicemail, a real letter. Cream-colored envelope, no return address, stamped in Maine. The handwriting was unmistakable. Julie. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter for 2 days, untouched, like a fruit I didn't trust. I kept waiting for the urge to tear it up, burn it, toss it in the lake. But something about it held me. Not curiosity, not nostalgia. It was the need to know. So on the third night after the babies were asleep, I made a cup of tea, sat at the table, and opened it. Just a single sheet, one paragraph. You got what you wanted. They're yours. I hope they scream. I hope they fight. I hope they break things. Maybe then you'll understand what it's like to raise a mirror that never blinks. I never meant to be anyone's mother. You made me one. Now you get to live with that. No signature, no date, no apology, just venom in cursive. I read it once, then again. The bitterness was so carefully distilled, it almost impressed me. But it didn't cut the way she hoped it would. Not anymore. Because for all her coldness, for all her calculation, there was something honest in that final line. You made me one. Julie was right about one thing. She had never intended to be a mother, but she'd created 2 children anyway, and in doing so, she'd accidentally created me again too, not as a replacement, but as a woman transformed. That night, I wrote her back, not to send, just to write, to get it out. You didn't drown the mirror, Julie, you broke it. And what's left is sharper than anything you planned. You didn't raise children, you discarded them. You didn't lose, you quit. And there's a difference. I'll raise them to know love without strings, identity without ownership. And if they ever ask about you, I'll tell the truth. Not the version you wrote, but the one you tried to erase. I folded the letter and tucked it away. Then I went and checked on the babies. Benjamin was snoring gently, arms splayed above his head like a tiny sunbather. Wren had rolled onto her stomach again, always the escape artist. Her small fingers clutched around the leg of a stuffed fox. They didn't need to know Julie yet, maybe not ever, but someday they'd ask, and when they did, I'd be ready. The seasons passed. Wren started walking first, bold, upright steps across the kitchen tile like she had somewhere to be. Benjamin followed a week later, slower, but more deliberate. He waited, watched, then moved with purpose, just like Mark. We had a small birthday party for them that spring. Just a few friends, some neighbors, and Harold from the Gazette, who brought 2 cupcakes and a grin. I watched the kids smash frosting into their faces and laughed harder than I had in years. After everyone left and the dishes were done, I sat on the porch with the monitor beside me, listening to the soft white noise of sleep. That's when I saw her, a figure across the street, half shadow standing beneath the broken streetlight. I couldn't see her face, couldn't even be sure it was her. But the way she stood, arms crossed, chin down, it was familiar. I didn't move, didn't shout, just watched. She stood there for maybe 20 seconds, then she turned and walked away. No car, no sound, just gone. I didn't report it. There was nothing to report, and besides, I understood now, that's all she ever wanted, to be seen, to be almost there, to remind me she could still appear if she wanted to. And in doing so, she gave me a gift she never meant to give, a moment of clarity. She was never going to take them back, because she couldn't. Not really. Julie had lost the story. It didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to the children. And to me, the morning light hit the kitchen just right. Warm, honey-colored, catching the dust in the air and making it look like time had slowed down. Wren was crouched under the table, whispering secrets to her stuffed fox. Benjamin was pulling magnets off the fridge one by one, lining them up like soldiers. They didn't know today was different, but I did. Today marked 2 full years since I found that suitcase in the lake. 2 years since silence cracked open and something better crawled out. I used to think grief was a weight, something heavy you carried, but it's not. Grief changes your posture. It makes you walk differently. It turns your voice inward. You still move through the world, but your center of gravity is never quite the same. Raising Wren and Benjamin didn't erase the loss. It redefined it. It gave me something to carry with the grief, something lighter. That afternoon, I took them both to the park. The same park where I used to push Mark on the tire swing, back when he wore Velcro shoes and believed lightning bugs were magic. Wren ran to the slides. Benjamin climbed into the sandbox. They didn't need me to play with them. Not today. They just needed to look up every few minutes and know I was there. And I was. That's all they'd ever need from me, really. Presence. That night, after baths and books and that 100-step bedtime routine only toddlers can engineer, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea and the box. It was an old shoebox taped at the corners, full of pieces I hadn't looked at in months. Julie's letters, Mark's emails, the DNA test, the photo of the baby girl in the blanket. I held it all, not to relive it, but to remember what survival cost. Then I took it outside and lit a small fire in the pit behind the shed. One by one, I fed the pages into the flame, not as erasure, as closure. Let the court documents live in their files. Let the stories be archived in Harold's articles. But this part, the part that lived in my chest, needed to turn to ash. When the last corner of the last letter curled into smoke, I stood there a minute longer, just breathing, just being. I don't know where Julie is. I don't know what name she wears now or whose life she's circling next, but I do know this. She'll never come back here. Not because she's afraid, because she's finished. This town knows her now. This family healed without her. The silence she tried to control is gone, replaced by laughter, by tears, by sleepless nights and crayon marks on the walls and 2 tiny toothbrushes in the holder next to mine. She never understood how loud love can be. She only understood power, and now she has neither. Before bed, I check on the kids one last time. Wren's curled against the crib rails, breathing deep. Benjamin's on his back. One hand on his chest like he's making sure his heart's still beating. They're safe. They're mine. Not because I claimed them, but because I showed up. Over and over, every hour, every bruise, every question, every time it would have been easier to walk away. That's the difference between a parent and a performer. A parent stays, even when no one's watching, especially then. I know they'll ask questions someday, about their mother, about what really happened, about how a family can break and still be worth building again. And when they do, I won't lie, but I won't center her either, because the story isn't about her anymore. It's about what came after. Thank you for walking through this story with me. If something in it resonated or reminded you of someone, I hope you'll share it. Quiet survival deserves to be witnessed.